لكم.
Rien n'est plus républicain.
Hello and welcome to Unscripted. I'm Kavitah Waib. In this edition of the program, we have the pleasure of having Paul Craig Roberts. He's from the Institute for Political Economy. He also served as the United States Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Economic Policy. Now, he's written extensively on the foreign policy of the U.S. In one of his most recent contributions, titled "The Days of Democracy Are Over," he said, quote, "For decades, I have been watching American democracy unravel, and it's become increasingly dysfunctional." Well, hopefully, we will unravel that statement in this edition of the program. Paul Craig Roberts, welcome to Unscripted.
Well, thank you.
Let's start out with, I guess I gave a sort of an intro to the topic, and that is the U.S. and signs of it not doing well. There are plenty of it out there. Your article pointed to some. I have one set of statements and topics that point to that fact, like U.S. officials moving out of their residences into military bases, such as Stephen Miller, Marco Rubio, to name a couple. You have the Charlie Kirk assassination, which is somewhat related to Palestine and the issue of the Gaza genocide. You have the government shutdown, and you had that No Kings protest. Tell us what's going on, Paul.
So the Democrat Party abandoned the working class. It now refers to the working class as the Trump deplorables, and it represents an anti-American liberal left view that white people are racist and need to be replaced. So we've had under President Biden, President Obama, we had 12 years of open borders in which the country was flooded with non-citizens. And now these Democrats use their offices in cities, as mayors, in states, as governors, to block the United States government from deporting the illegals, the millions of illegals that were allowed into the country. So the Democrats are no longer part of a system that can make compromises. They are now in insurrection against federal authority. This is just one aspect. Perhaps the overriding feature is that the United States government has been shut down for longer than 1 month. So the democracy is now so dysfunctional, the government can't function. It's impossible for the two parties to produce a budget so the government can function. So now we have federal judges attempting to give President Trump the power over the budget such that the Congress no longer has a role. So you can see we have a situation where the judiciary, and here I'm talking even about the Democrats, the Democrat appointed judges by President Obama, are giving Trump the power over the budget to make expenditures without the authorization of Congress. So they are creating an autocrat, a form of dictatorship. You see, for many years, the president, the executive branch, has been independent of Congress when it comes to going to war or attacking other countries. That's supposed to be decided by Congress that declares war. The last time Congress made a declaration of war was December 1941. And all the wars since, the president has taken the country to war without the authorization of Congress in a declaration of war. That already shows a dysfunctional system. But now we have judges giving the president the authority to expend funds without a budget authorization. So this is a sign of complete Democrat breakdown.
Let me jump in and try to give a break to some of the topics you covered there, because obviously we're going to continue with a lot of other issues. But regarding the, I guess the fact that you talked about the immigrants and you've had the flooding of non-citizens, as you stated, into the country. This is not something that is only new in the past, let's say, 8 years to 10 years. I mean, this has been going on for quite some time. And there are many Americans who actually are not only against the way that this is being executed, but from what my understanding is that they actually fulfill many of the jobs that perhaps many Americans don't take, which somewhat contributes to a positive economy. Is that one way of looking at this?
No, that's an excuse that's used for not enforcing the border.
All right, we can talk about this. We can talk about this at length. Unfortunately, the time doesn't allow that to happen. I'm summing up, like I started my question, with a number of things that seem very alarming, at least from the outside looking in, and I just cherry-picked some of them. The Charlie Kirk assassination seems to have obviously had an impact in the U.S. You know, we're from this side of the world looking in, or anybody from outside looking in is wondering what's going on. We're looking at the fact that you had this, and let me ask you this, because obviously this is quite a high figure that we looked at when it comes to this No King's March that happened. 2,700 events. It happened in all 50 states. I'm looking at the stats that says it was an uprising 14 times larger than both of Trump's inaugurations. And it was in the millions, up to 7 million that were clocked in terms of the numbers. What is going on? Are people against Trump's policies? Is that why so many came? Tell us your impression as to what's happened here.
This is what I say. The Democrat Party is now an ideological party. It has an ideological agenda. And it's an agenda that doesn't fit with American tradition or with the values and mores of the electorate that elected Trump. The Democrats lost the election, but they're still 45% of the electorate. Well, that's a lot of people. You know, 45% of the electorate is a huge sum. And so 7 million is a small figure to come from the Democrat electorate, which is 45% of the electorate. And so this was a protest saying that illegal aliens have the same rights as American citizens. That's what the protest was about. It was an assertion that the illegals who entered illegally, who are here illegally, have every right that an American citizen has, and cannot be deported. And so when the federal agents go in to deport them, they're faced with the threat of violence by Democrat Party members.
All right. Well, let me bring this particular quote from one American who said, "We cannot count on the Supreme Court." And I'm sorry to jump in there, Paul. He said, "We cannot count on the Supreme Court. We cannot count on the government. We cannot count on Congress. We have all the legislative, the executive, and judiciary that are all against the American people right now. So we are fighting." Amongst other statements like democracy, not monarchy, and the Constitution is not optional. Again, no king's protest, some of the protesters' statements there. What do you have to say to them?
Well, both sides make that same argument. So the Trump people make that argument against the Democrats who censor, suppress speech, and it seems now the other side is making that argument because the federal government is trying to deport illegal entrants.
All right.
In my own view is there are too many illegal aliens here now for them to be deported. There's just too many millions. It's such a huge organizational task that I don't think it can be done. But they're going through the motions, but they're certainly not going to end up deporting 12, 14, 15 million people. This is an organizational feat that is huge.
Yeah, it's about that number, actually. You pretty much nailed the number. It's about 15 million. And I think, if I remember correctly, it costs billions of dollars to actually make this happen, if it were to happen. But let's move on, again, because of time's sake. And I'd like to talk to you about something that is in your specialty, and that's the U.S. national debt, where this one particular entry that I want to bring up and ask you about said, forget the national debt. U.S. banks are on the brink of $223 trillion derivative crisis. Now, that is obviously a large number. I'm not too sure I could wrap my head around it, but tell us the state of the U.S. economy through this angle that I just brought up.
I don't know. I don't know what the derivative debt is. We went through a derivative crash some years ago, and allegedly this wasn't supposed to happen again. So I assume if we have another derivative crash, the Federal Reserve will again permit the smaller banks to fail, and the Federal Reserve will create the money for the larger banks to buy the smaller banks so that the banking system becomes ever more monopolized. The main function of the Federal Reserve over the years has been to monopolize the banking system. We already have a situation with the 5 largest banks, and this is 5 out of thousands of banks. 5 largest have 90% of all deposits. So after the next derivative crisis, they'll have 98% of all deposits. So that's about all I can say about it. If the crisis causes the wealth of depositors to be seized, then America will become a very poor country overnight. Nobody will have any assets. I don't know that they could get away with that without provoking a tremendous amount of violence. So this is something that I could only speculate about. I don't have any inside information.
Yep, I understand that.
The stock market doesn't believe it. It keeps going higher.
Indeed. Well, the thing is, I'm trying to separate facts from fiction. For example, another entry here says that U.S. is exposing the lie because you're owed, addressing the American people, $495,000. And it says that's the hidden $169 trillion heist. And it goes on to say that you were never in debt, you were the collateral, that $169 trillion were stolen. Is this just throwing gasoline over fire to get viewership through an entry on a website? Is this really what is going on? Where it says, "The storm is here, wake up, the debt clock, a digital shackle." What's your interpretation of this?
I don't know. There are claims that they'll create a debt crisis and rescue it by moving to a digital currency. Well, a digital currency means that you no longer control your own assets, and that if you misbehave, the government can cut you off from your assets. So a digital currency would introduce a total police state in which no one would have any ability to dissent. If they did, they would find themselves cut off from their access to the digital currency. So I don't think they can get away with a digital currency at this point. The United States national debt has never been a problem because the dollar is the world reserve currency. And what that means is that the central banks of the world hold their reserves in dollars in the form of U.S. Treasury bonds. So the debt of the United States, when it increases, all it means is the reserves of the world banking system increases. Everyone's happy. This works. It gets in trouble when the United States weaponizes the dollar with sanctions. And those sanctions tell foreign countries, hey, if we hold our reserves in treasury bonds, we may lose them like Russia did. You know, the Russian reserves in treasury bonds, $300 billion, were simply frozen. And now they're talking about confiscating them and giving them to Ukraine.
Indeed.
So that's the threat to American debt. If countries stop holding American debt as the reserves of their banking system because the debt's been weaponized, then all of a sudden the American debt is a problem because no one will want it.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Ukraine there and Russia, and I need to then go into that topic and quote you in an interview where you said, "Trump has adopted my terminology. The war that should have been over in 1 week. I've been saying that for years, and it's true. It was a strategic blunder." So my question is, how can this be a strategic blunder that you said Putin created this for himself, and he tries to cover it up. But my question to you, Paul Craig Roberts, is you have these super weapons, for example, that Russia is actually producing and then exercising, like the Poseidon, which is called a strategic game changer. You also have another one of Putin's release, which is somewhat of a game changer. Again, as it was said, a paradigm shift is how they called it. Are we looking at Russia sending out signals with these types of weapons to the U.S. and NATO in turn? And how do you think that's being interpreted by both U.S. and NATO?
They don't pay any attention to them. They discount them. Trump ignored them. And the reason is that over the last 4 years, that Putin has destroyed his credibility. He didn't enforce any red line. He accepts any provocation with no response. And so he has convinced the Western world that he's irresolute, something of a coward, won't fight, and can't even defeat tiny Ukraine. A war going on for 4 years is a strategic blunder because it let the West get involved and get more and more involved. And now we have long-range missiles hitting deep inside Russia, disorganizing Russian life. And the provocations keep getting worse. For example, when the Russian strategic bombing fleet was hit, and Putin denied it. He said, well, it's not an act of war, it's an act of terrorism. I don't have to do anything. So he's convinced the West that he won't do anything, and no one believes he'll use the super weapons. They've had super weapons before. They had the hypersonic missiles that can't be intercepted. They had the undersea torpedo that can flood seacoast. They've had those for several years. They had no effect either. And the latest super weapons are not.
Well,
Putin uses these weapons to make up for the fact that he hasn't got any credibility. He never put his foot down.
Okay, but when you say that, at the same time, you're having, as I mentioned, the nuclear-powered missiles, the Burevestnik, you had Poseidon also, and then you have NATO that's struggling to keep pace with artillery production. Armors, for example. The NATO chief Mark Rutte, he said and admitted that Moscow produces more shells in 3 months than the entire alliance does in a year. Then what would you say to that stance of Russia, or to that positioning?
Well, I think the West is extremely unrealistic. And my concern is that Putin, by not stopping the provocations, by showing resolution, has encouraged them for so long, and they've gotten worse, and they're spiraling out of control, and it's leading to a war. So that Putin's good intentions of not being aggressive in hopes of having a real negotiation that ends the feeling of Russian insecurity with NATO on its borders, with American missile sites in Poland, Romania. This is the real problem, not the conflict in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem Putin wants addressed. And so he has been very slow to respond to provocations, hoping to create goodwill with the West so that the real issue can be addressed. What Putin wants is a mutual security agreement. And this is what the West denies him. So his effort to be unaggressive, not confirm the propaganda that Russia is trying to recreate the Soviet empire and all of that, is backfired. What it's done is convince the West that he doesn't resist, and so they can keep provoking. Sooner or later, they're going to provoke too much, and then we're going to have a real war, and that's my view of it.
Okay.
I don't think the West can defeat Russia. It's just that Russia has not yet decided to fight.
Okay, well, let's move on to a topic where, when I mentioned how the NATO chief Mark Rutte said that NATO can't really keep up with production, it reminds me of the Israeli aggression against Iran. The West calls it the Israel war against Iran, where there was the penetration of the Iranian missiles that I'd like to ask from you, so much so that the Iron Dome system, one of the systems anyways, was unable to keep up with it, and it was because they didn't have enough THAAD missiles to thwart the incoming Iranian missiles. It was said that the production actually takes between 3 to 7 years. This is quite unbelievable. It's still mentioning it. What do you think about the fact about, first of all, what do you think about the aggression that Israel executed against Iran, and the fact that he had one of these deficiencies, a major one, where Iranian missiles obviously penetrated one of many defense systems, or the Iron Dome as an example, and obviously incurred the damage that it did?
Well, I was surprised that Iran didn't take advantage of the fact that the Iron Dome was outdated and could not withstand its attack, and go ahead and finish off Israel. by stopping.
You were surprised that Iran didn't finish off Israel. How do you mean?
Yeah, I'm surprised. Well, why didn't Iran continue the attack and destroy the place?
Well, they asked for a ceasefire. Through the U.S., they asked for a ceasefire.
Why did they agree? They give a ceasefire so Israel can update the dome and block the missiles the next time.
That's a good question to ask Iranian officials. I'm sure it's been debated here.
Yeah, you see, it's always foolish to give ceasefires because the ceasefire is the person losing who wants to revamp the ability to continue the fight. So all Iran did was to demonstrate, hey, we can knock you out.
So are you saying if it continued, that if Iran continued, that it would have wiped off Israel, that it would have decimated Israel, or obviously destroyed large parts of it, if not all of it?
They could have easily have done that, and they stopped. And so it's going to be much difficult the next time because they'll update the Iron Dome. They may even pull out their nukes.
When you say the next time, so I'm guessing that you mean there will be a next time based on how you see the developments and how you see things between the two?
Well, I can't be sure, but I do know that Israel sees Iran as a limit on its ability to dominate the Middle East. You know, Israel's borders are always expanding. Israel now includes part of southern Syria. It includes part of southern Lebanon. It's all of Palestine. The borders of Israel keep moving, and the Americans in the 21st century destroyed the Arab countries that were Israel's opponents. They destroyed Gaddafi in Libya, Saddam Hussein in Iraq. They've destroyed Assad in Syria. For Israel, everything continues to open. In the United States, Israel has complete control over American foreign policy, particularly in the Middle East. And Trump has found it very difficult to stand up to Netanyahu's pressure. Look, Trump attacked Iran for Israel. Israel will try to get him to do that again in a more major way. Now, I don't know whether Trump will do it or not, but I do know that Israel has tremendous influence in the United States.
Okay.
Their lobbies are the most powerful of all, and their money counts. So who knows what will happen?
Well, let me ask you this then, as a final question here. The U.S. National Intelligence Director, Tulsi Gabbard, said that the former American strategy of regime change in the U.S. is over. She actually came out and said that the U.S. National Intelligence Director sees America's former strategy of regime change or nation building, as the U.S. likes to call it, has ended under U.S. President Donald Trump. Yet we have the U.S. to have attacked Yemen, Iran, bombing boats in Venezuelan waters. The list is rather long. And you have, the covert CIA operations against Venezuela. We're looking at Nigeria now, and the most recent one is Mexico. So what do you think?
Well, she's the only one who said that. And I think that's her hopes. But Trump didn't say that. His government didn't say that. And we have a massive military buildup off of Venezuela, and we have Trump threatening to send troops to Nigeria. So it doesn't seem that Tulsi Gabbard is correct. I wish she were. It would be a good thing, but I think it's very strange indeed. It's hilarious. The United States can't keep its own government in operation, but Trump's running around the world telling everybody else what to do. While the United States government is closed down and they can't even open the United States government, but the president can run around and tell Venezuela what to do, Iran what to do, China what to do, Putin what to do, Nigeria what to do.
I agree with you. Indeed.
It's absurd. It's an absurdity. And when it's what you're viewing is such a total lack of reality. It's like the United States exists in a world unrelated to all reality.
Indeed.
It
Very well.
can't get its own government working, but it's going to tell everybody else what to do.
That's right. Exactly. Very well. We're gonna have, unfortunately, ran out of time here, so we're gonna have to leave it there. But it was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much, Paul Craig Roberts. There. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, you heard the statements there by Paul Craig Roberts. Some interesting statements, to say the least, especially his comments on the Israeli aggression against Iran and how Iran should have continued the retaliation that would have been very much against Israel's interests. And you have to actually listen to that again in order to get the full thrust of what Paul Craig Roberts was saying. To do that, log on to our website for a repeat of the program, allthews.presstv.ir. From me, Kaveh Tagwi, and the team here at Unscripted, it's goodbye.
Rien n'est plus républicain.
حلقة